The town of Thornwick Bay smelled like rust and low tide. Adrian Voss had lived there for 6 weeks, and he still hadn't gotten used to the way fog rolled in off the water every night at exactly 9 o'clock, swallowing the lighthouse whole until only its lamp remained, a single yellow eye blinking through the gray. He climbed the spiral stairs of that lighthouse most evenings, not because the job required it. The automated light needed no keeper anymore, but because his father had asked him, in the last letter he ever wrote, to finish what I started. His father had been the harbor's unofficial caretaker for 30 years. Adrian had been gone for 10 of them, and now he was back only because grief had nowhere else to put him. He didn't know anyone in town. He liked it that way. That night, sitting on the iron steps with his knees pulled to his chest, Adrian did something he promised himself he wouldn't do again. He picked up his phone, scrolled to the last number his father had ever called, and typed out everything he couldn't say to a headstone. I don't know why I'm doing this. You're not going to read it. I just needed to send it somewhere. I found your logbooks. 30 years of tide charts, and you never once wrote how you felt about anything. Not even in the entry from the night Mom left. Just wind speed. Barometric pressure. I used to think that was cold. Now I think it was the only language you had. I miss you in a way that doesn't have a name yet. He hit send before he could think better of it, then dropped the phone like it had burned him. 30 miles away, in a radio booth lit only by a single red on-air bulb, a phone buzzed against the soundboard. Julian Reyes looked down at the screen between songs. A new number. Not one of his listeners. His call-in line was a different digit entirely. Just a stranger's message, raw and unfinished, glowing in the dark like it had wandered into the wrong room and didn't know how to leave. He should have ignored it. He read it 3 times instead. Julian's show ran from 11 to 2, 6 nights a week, under the name Harbor. Not his real name. He'd buried that one 2 years ago, back when a single leaked photo and a cruel headline had turned his old band's rising career into a punchline, and turned him into a man who flinched at the sound of his own name in public. Now he was just a voice. Low, warm, unhurried. The kind of voice that made lonely truck drivers and insomniac fishermen feel like someone in the world was still awake with them. He liked it that way. Anonymity was armor. He typed back before the song ended, thumb hovering over send longer than he wanted to admit. Wrong number, friend. But for what it's worth, that message sounded like it needed somewhere to land. I hope it did. 3 dots appeared almost immediately on the other end. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Sorry. That was supposed to go to a landline that got disconnected years ago. Habit, I guess. Didn't mean to dump that on a stranger. Julian smiled at the console, alone in the dark. No apology needed. I talk to strangers for a living. This is basically my resting state. You a therapist? Close. Radio DJ. Same job, worse pay, better music. There was a pause long enough that Julian assumed the conversation had ended. People did that, drifted off mid-sentence into their own lives. But then the reply came, and something in it made him sit up straighter. I don't really talk to anyone since my dad died. Guess I picked a good night to accidentally talk to someone. Julian's fingers hovered over the keyboard for a long moment before he answered. Then I'm glad your fingers slipped. Adrian didn't tell the stranger his name. The stranger didn't offer his either. There was something safer in that. 2 voices meeting in the dark without faces attached, without history, without the small-town weight of, oh, you're Warren Voss's boy, aren't you? Heard about your father. Terrible thing that followed Adrian everywhere he went in Thornwick Bay. He started listening to 91.4 FM out of curiosity. Just once, he told himself. Just to see what kind of voice belonged to a man who could turn sorry for the inconvenience into something that felt like comfort. The DJ, Harbor, the station called him, had a voice like a low tide pulling back from shore, unhurried, certain, leaving something behind every time it retreated. He played old soul records and quiet piano instrumentals, and between songs he talked about nothing in particular. The fog, the ferry schedule, a story about a dog that waited at the same bus stop every day for an owner who died 6 months prior and hadn't yet been told the dog still came. Adrian listened until 2 in the morning, lying on the lighthouse keeper's cot with his father's logbooks stacked beside him, and for the first time in 6 weeks, the silence in that tower didn't feel like drowning. The next night, he texted the stranger again. Your listener with the dog story. Did that really happen? You're listening to my station? I might have looked it up. You said you were a radio DJ. There's only one late-night show in 100 miles that plays Otis Redding and talks about grief like it's weather. Wasn't hard. There was a long pause. Julian stared at the message, heart doing something unfamiliar and inconvenient. Careful. Next you'll figure out my name. And then where's the mystery? Would you tell me if I asked? Not yet. Fair. I like a good mystery. Julian looked at the clock. 40 minutes until his shift ended. He hadn't looked forward to the end of a shift in longer than he could remember. Then let's keep it that way for a while. Stranger to stranger. No names, no faces. Just this. Deal. Adrian wrote back. Stranger to stranger. Neither of them noticed, in that moment, how much that sentence already sounded like the beginning of something neither of them was ready to name. What neither man knew, what the fog of Thornwick Bay kept hidden the way it kept everything hidden, was that they had already passed each other twice. Once, at the Blue Anchor Diner, where Adrian ate breakfast alone every morning at 7 and Julian came in at 6:30 after his shift, hood up, sunglasses on even in the gray morning light, ordering black coffee and saying nothing to anyone. They had reached for the same creamer once. Adrian had said sorry. Julian had said no, you're fine, and left before their eyes fully met. The second time was at the harbor itself, where Julian sometimes walked before dawn to let the cold air undo the tightness his own voice built up in his throat during 4 hours of performing warmth he didn't always feel. Adrian had been up in the lighthouse, checking the lamp mechanism, and had glanced down to see a lone figure standing at the edge of the pier, hood up, hands in his pockets, staring at the water like it owed him an answer. Adrian remembered thinking, that man looks as lonely as I feel. He never imagined that the lonely man on the pier and the warm voice in his ear were the same person. Over the following 2 weeks, stranger to stranger became something else, something neither of them had a word for yet, so they didn't try to name it. They only knew that 11 o'clock had become the best part of both their days. Adrian told the stranger about his father's logbooks, 30 years of numbers and no feelings, and how he'd started reading between the lines, translating wind, 12 knots. Visibility poor into what he suspected his father actually meant. I am afraid. I don't know how to say it. Please don't ask me to. My dad and I didn't speak for the last 4 years of his life. Adrian wrote one night, the confession arriving easier in text than it ever had in person. I told him something about myself he didn't want to hear. He didn't say anything cruel. He just went quiet. And I let the quiet last 4 years, because I thought there'd be more time to fix it. What did you tell him? Adrian's thumb hovered over the screen for a long time. That I'm gay, that I'd been seeing someone for 2 years, and I wanted him to meet him. He just said okay and changed the subject to the boat engine. We never spoke about it again. Never spoke about much of anything again. The reply took 4 minutes to arrive. Adrian counted every one of them. I'm sorry. That's a specific kind of loneliness, being unrefused and unwelcomed at the same time. You say things like that, like you've measured loneliness before. I might have a few unfortunate qualifications in that department. Want to talk about it? Not tonight. But, thank you for asking instead of assuming. Adrian smiled at his phone in the dark, the lighthouse lamp turning slow gold circles across the ceiling above him. Anytime, stranger. It was Julian who broke first, not with his identity, but with an invitation. There's a bonfire the station does every year on the second Saturday of the month, down at Cutter's Beach. Locals mostly. Bad guitar playing, good chowder. I won't be harbor there. I'll just be a guy standing near a fire not saying much. But if you wanted to come, and if you wanted to find me, I wouldn't stop you. Adrian stared at the message until the lighthouse lamp completed a full rotation. How would I find a guy who won't tell me his name? You'll know. Trust me. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got tonight. Adrian went. Of course he went. He'd have walked through fire, not just toward one, for the chance to put a face to the voice that had, without his noticing, become the steadiest thing in his unsteady year. Cutter's Beach was loud with bad guitar and good laughter, the fire throwing orange light against the fog like it was trying to burn a hole clean through it. Adrian stood at the edge of the crowd the way he stood at the edge of everything now, hands in his pockets, searching faces for one he didn't know how to recognize. Then he heard it. That voice. Not from a speaker this time. From 6 feet away, low and unhurried, saying, "You're standing like a man who doesn't know if he's allowed to be here." Adrian turned. The hood was down this time. The sunglasses were gone. Dark eyes, a scar through one eyebrow he'd never mentioned in any text, a smile that looked like it was still deciding whether it was safe to exist in daylight. You, Adrian said, and it wasn't a question. Me, Julian said. Hi, stranger. They walked away from the fire without discussing it, down to where the sand went dark and quiet, and the water hissed low against the shore. Julian, he said, holding out a hand like it was a confession. Julian Reyes, former musician, current voice of the graveyard shift, professional avoider of eye contact in daylight. Adrian took the hand. It was warmer than he expected. Steadier. Adrian Voss, current lighthouse keeper by inheritance. Professional avoider of everything. Honestly, we should start a club. I think we already did. Membership, too. No name badges. Terrible attendance policy. Julian laughed, really laughed, the sound catching Adrian somewhere under his ribs. And for a moment neither of them said anything, just stood there letting the fact of each other settle into place. I looked you up, Adrian admitted. After the diner. After the pier. I didn't know it was you saying those things at night, but I noticed you. The guy who never takes his hood down. I noticed you too, Julian said quietly. The guy who eats breakfast alone and looks like the world owes him an apology it's never going to give. That obvious? Only to someone doing the exact same thing. The fire crackled behind them, far enough away now to sound like weather instead of company. Julian looked out at the water, and something in his face went careful, like he was deciding how much truth the night could hold. I have to tell you something, he said, about why I hide. It's not just shyness. Adrian didn't push. He just waited, the way the lighthouse waited every night for ships that might never come. Patient, steady, willing to keep the light on regardless. Take your time, he said. Julian told it in pieces, the way people tell the truths that cost them the most. 2 years ago, he'd been in a band on the edge of something real, small tours, growing crowds, a label finally circling. He'd been seeing a man quietly, carefully, the way you do when you're not ready for the world to have an opinion about you yet. Someone had photographed them. A tabloid blog ran it under a headline that turned 2 years of tenderness into a punchline. His bandmates panicked. The label went quiet, then gone. His own family, in a small town 2 states over, stopped answering his calls the way a phone stops ringing when the line's been cut. I didn't lose a career, Julian said, voice low, eyes on the water. I lost the version of myself that thought being seen was safe. So I built a new one. A voice in the dark that people could love without ever needing to look at. It felt safer that way. It still does, some nights. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. My father never photographed me for the world to laugh at, he said finally. He just went quiet, like I said. But I think I understand the shape of what you're describing. Being unwelcome and being watched, they leave the same kind of scar, just from different directions. 2 damaged men, Julian said, with a small, rueful laugh. Great foundation for a friendship. Who said friendship? The words left Adrian's mouth before he'd fully decided to say them. Julian turned to look at him, firelight catching gold in his eyes, and for the first time all night, neither of them looked away. Careful, Julian said softly. I've been careful my whole life, Adrian said. Look where it got me. Talking to a stranger's voicemail because I was too scared to talk to anyone real. I'm real. I know, Adrian said. That's what scares me. They didn't kiss that night. Some things need more runway than one bonfire can offer. Instead, they started doing something braver in its own quiet way, meeting in daylight. Coffee at the Blue Anchor, where this time they sat together and Julian didn't wear his hood. Walks along the harbor where Adrian pointed out which boats his father had repaired and which ones had repaired him in turn, in small unspoken ways, over 30 years of tide charts. Julian came to the lighthouse one evening with 2 coffees and a look on his face like he was bracing for something. I want to play you something, he said. On the air tonight. If that's all right. What is it? You'll have to listen and find out. That night, Adrian sat on the iron steps with his phone against his ear, and at 11:47, after a Sam Cooke record faded out, Harbor's voice came through the static, quieter than usual. This one's for someone I used to only know as a wrong number, Julian said, and even through the radio, Adrian could hear the smile in it. Turned out to be the rightest wrong number of my whole year. Then came a piano instrumental Adrian didn't recognize, something Julian must have written himself, something unpolished and unfinished and more honest than anything on the label albums that never came out. Adrian sat there in the fog, lighthouse lamp turning slow gold circles overhead. and felt something in his chest come loose that had been clenched tight since the day his father stopped speaking to him. It rained the next morning, the first real rain Thornwick Bay had seen in a month, and when Adrian opened the lighthouse door, Julian was standing there, soaked through, hood down, looking like a man who'd run the whole way. "I got scared," Julian said, breathless. After the song aired, "I thought maybe I'd said too much, shown too much. My whole body wanted to run back into the dark where it's safe." "But you didn't run." "No," Julian said. "I ran here instead." Adrian pulled him inside out of the rain, and for a long moment they just stood in the doorway, dripping and quiet. Two men who had spent years perfecting the art of hiding, finally choosing, together, not to. "I'm not going anywhere," Adrian said. "Not the way people usually mean that. I mean, I'm not going to go quiet on you. Whatever this is. I already know what 4 years of quiet costs. I'm not paying that price again." Julian looked at him for a long moment, rain still clinging to his lashes, and then closed the distance between them. The first kiss tasted like salt and rain, and everything both of them had been too afraid to say out loud until a wrong number gave them an alibi. Word travels slow in a town wrapped in fog most nights, but it travels. Within a month, half of Thornwick Bay knew that the reclusive lighthouse keeper and the mysterious midnight DJ had become something neither of them tried very hard to hide anymore. There were no dramatic confrontations, no cruel headlines this time. Just the ordinary, unglamorous bravery of two men choosing, day after day, to be seen. Julian took his hood down at the diner. He started signing off his show with his real name. Once, quietly, like testing whether the ground beneath him would hold. "This is Julian Reyes, and this was Harbor After Midnight. And if you're out there listening, wherever you are, thank you for finding me in the dark." Adrian finished restoring the lighthouse lamp mechanism his father had left half repaired, and on the night he flipped the switch and watched the old light spin steady and sure for the first time in years. He found himself talking out loud to no one, or maybe to someone, the way his father never could. "I don't know if you'd have liked him," Adrian said to the fog, to the water, to whatever part of his father might still be listening. "But I think you'd have understood him. He knows what it's like to go quiet when the world gets too loud. I think that's the thing you two would have had in common." The lamp turned overhead, gold and steady, and somewhere down on the pier, a familiar figure was walking toward the light. No hood, no sunglasses, no hiding. Just Julian, hands in his pockets, smiling the smile that had taken 2 years and one wrong number to come back to daylight. Winter came softer than either of them expected. The station gave Julian a new evening slot, 6 to 9, no more graveyard shift, no more hiding behind midnight. And he took it without flinching, because there was finally something in daylight worth staying visible for. Adrian kept the lighthouse running the old-fashioned way, by hand, the way his father had asked, but he stopped doing it alone. Some nights Julian climbed the spiral stairs with him just to sit in comfortable silence and watch the light turn. No words needed, the kind of quiet that heals instead of hurts. One evening, near the 1-year anniversary of the message that had started it all, Adrian took out his phone and opened the old thread, the one meant for a disconnected number, the one that had somehow found its way to exactly the right person. "I don't think I ever really finished that message to you," he typed. "The one I meant for my dad's old line." "You don't have to finish it if you don't want to," Julian wrote back from 3 feet away, phone glowing in the dark of the lighthouse room, both of them smiling at the absurdity of texting each other in the same room. "I want to," Adrian typed. "I said I missed him in a way that didn't have a name yet. I think I found the name. It's not a word. It's you. It's this. It's the fact that grief led me somewhere, and that somewhere turned out to have you in it." Julian looked up from his phone, eyes bright in the lamplight, and crossed the small room to sit beside him. "For the record," he said, "that's the least professional thing I've ever heard from a lighthouse keeper." "For the record," Adrian said, "you fell in love with a wrong number." Professional was never on the table. Outside, the fog rolled back for the first time in weeks, revealing a sky full of clear, cold stars, and the lighthouse beams swept over open water, steady and sure, no longer searching for something lost, but simply announcing, over and over, into the dark, someone is home, someone is found, someone, finally, is not alone.